Hi guys. I had a feeling that you were feeling maybe a little bit out of touch with me, and I was feeling a little bit out of touch with you. So I thought I'd do a video and go through the notes just to give you a feel for them so you're not trying to figure all this out on your own with the book. Also, there's a lot of stuff in the book that I don't necessarily cover, so I wanted to talk about that too. So I'm going to post these notes online. You can take a look at them. You can follow through. You can download them and follow through on them. Sorry it's so wiggly. Hopefully this will be better. Anyway, so I'm going to go through chapter by chapter, and these notes I'll post, and then you can follow along with them when you download them. Okay, so chapter 1. Here we go. Organizational behavior is the study of individual and group behavior in the workplace. I always say I want to subtitle this course, Why Things Happen at Work the Way They Do. So it's a study of how people behave at work, and then also how people behave in groups and what influences them and all that kind of thing. It's to help you better understand. Okay, so there's this theory they talk about in the book, snake pit or clockwork. Ideally, every organization works in unison like a machine. If it's like a well-oiled machine, the systems are in place. And oftentimes when people set up work models, they do work that way. But then when you add the human element into it, you get into this idea of the snake pit, that there's confusion and chaos and misunderstanding, and it's just the human element, and it's just the way we are. Okay, so there are a couple of things that influence organizational behavior. Interpersonal relationships, psychosocial things, so how people interact with each other and with groups, at the larger groups, and also how people behave. So those are all the kind of things we're looking at when we look at organizational behavior. Oh, there we go. Okay, so there are also organizational variables that affect human behavior. Communication, how do people communicate in the workplace? Is it formal? Is it informal? Is it through written means? Is it through email, text? And not so much, we'll talk about this later in the semester. We're going to talk about communication later in the semester. And specifically that there are certain appropriate modes of communication for certain types of messages. Like, for example, you're not going to fire someone over text. People might do that, but it's not necessarily important, not really appropriate. Anyway, organizational structure, who reports to who. Performance appraisal, again, we'll talk about a little bit later on in the semester too. And that's in terms of our things that are rewarded, the things that people are looking for. So for example, if they say they're interested in customer service, but they really don't reward people who are good at customer service, instead they just reward the people who do a lot of sales, then what is it that is the company, is what they say is important to them? Are they really reinforcing that in the workplace? And then work design, organizational design, and jobs. That's essentially just how is it that people work? What are the job descriptions? Who's responsible for what, and that kind of thing. This is just me flipping the paper. If you can hear that noise in the background, sorry. Okay, all right. So we look at organizations in two different ways: external perspective and internal perspective. So the external perspective essentially looks at things in terms of external events, environmental forces, behavioral consequences. So I'm looking from the outside in, and it explains things. It explains situations based on what's going on in the outside environment. Is there some sort of, was there some sort of tragedy in the community? Was there some sort of great victory recently in the community? That kind of thing, or in the industry. And then internal perspective is more looking at things in terms of people's own experiences, people's belief systems, what's important to them, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Now, there are also interdisciplinary influences on organizational behavior, which means other areas, other areas of study. So organizational behavior is a soft science. Soft sciences are things like psychology, sociology, anthropology, whereas the hard sciences are are more things like, chemistry and physics and that kind of thing. So these are, so all sorts of different disciplines, all sorts of different areas of academic study influence organizational behavior, because all sorts of different things influence people, and really what we're talking about is people. So among those are soft sciences and hard sciences, medicine and engineering being hard sciences, and sociology, anthropology, and management being soft sciences. So sociology is a study of society, how people get along, why people do what they do, how people gather, how people separate, that kind of thing. Anthropology is a study of learned behavior of human beings over time. So, for example, a learned behavior could be in families that now people don't necessarily, eat their meals together, but because life is so busy. But in previous generations, people did eat their meals together, and that's the way to symbolize the way that you can understand how a culture, society works. That's my clock. I don't know if you hear that bird chirping, but that's my clock. Anyhow, okay, psychology is a study of human behavior. So sociology is all people. Psychology is just us individually. Management, study of how of overseeing activities and supervising people and organizations. We're going to talk about that when we talk about motivation. Medicine, healing or treating diseases to enhance health and well-being, and we're going to talk about that more when we talk about stress, the stress chapter later on in the semester. And then engineering, energy and matter. We don't really talk about that too much. We touch on it a little bit when we talk about stress. Engineering would be, say, like for example, a workplace is set up, if it's convenient to get to things, if the chairs are comfortable. It can be something as simple as that, but also very important. Okay, so these are just some terms. I always say that when people take classes, every class we take is a language class, and this class is the quote-unquote the language of organizational behavior. And so these are, in the beginning, we're learning a lot of different terms. So that we'll use later on in the course, and that you can use to describe things. So it makes you sound very knowledgeable if you use the vocabulary words. Okay, so task, it's an organization's mission, purpose, or goal for existing. So what is it the company is trying to accomplish? Are they trying to make sweatshirts? Are they trying to make cakes? Are they trying to provide a service for people? Is it a hotel? What's the task? What's the mission? People are the human resource of the organization, and then technology, the tasks, knowledge, and techniques used to transform inputs into outputs. All businesses transform inputs into outputs, and it usually goes through technology. So machinery, equipment, maybe it's people, maybe it's computers. And then structure is a system of communication, authorities, roles, and workflow. So who reports to who? How are the departments divided up? And that kind of thing. If you divide up things regionally, are they divided up based on product line? Every company has something different. Okay, let's just take a little look here. This diagram is in the book, so you can take a look at it. Sometimes I think it's nice for people to have a visual element. So you can see things. There's the inputs and the outputs. You can see over here. You see my hand? Sorry, there's the inputs going through the task and technology, and then we're over here with the outputs. And then there's a nice circle around everything that shows you the boundaries of the organization, and then things that are outside of the organization, like the task environment, competitors, unions, regulatory agencies, that kind of thing. So what goes on inside? What goes on outside influences what goes on inside. Okay. Now this is really important, and we're going to talk about it later on in the semester when we talk about culture. So there's the informal organization versus the formal organization. The informal organization are the less visible part of the system, beliefs and assumptions, perceptions, attitudes, values, group norms, who the informal leaders are. They might not necessarily have a position, but they're still considered a leader. And then the formal organization is the official, legitimate, and most visible part of the system. So it's what's written down, the policies and procedures, the job descriptions, the goals, the objectives, the structure, the communication channels. So that we have this, but does this always match up with this? All right, now learning about organizational behavior. There's a couple of different levels. There's a science, which we talked about some of that, the mastery of the basic skills, the theories, the research, the articles. Those are the things that we're going to talk about, and those are the things that you're going to use as your base when you're doing your journals, and then also you're going to use it when you're doing the case study at the end. So there's the theory, there's the quote unquote theories, and then there's the your experience in the real world, what it's like when, in organizational behavior, you see it in the workplace, you see it in your families, you'll see it in, if you're on a sports team or if you're involved in a volunteer organization or whatever. Anytime more than two people get together, you're going to see organizational behavior concepts coming out. And so that's when the real life experience and the science. And then finally, the application is this idea of matching one to the other, matching one up. So understanding why people do the things they do, and maybe sometimes even why you do the things you do, based on the theories and research and articles that we'll be looking at this semester. Okay. And then finally, there's objective knowledge that you're going to need to understand. So when we talk about cognitive master of theories, what does that mean? It's just like, that's a crazy phrase, right? So the idea of cognitive is how we think. Cognition is thinking. And so this whole idea is how this might be maybe a little bit, this slide goes with the slide before. Maybe we don't necessarily need this slide, but I wanted to put it in here anyway. Is being able to put together, look at something, think about it, and master those theories. And then from that, you'll understand research and research findings. Because all of this can be, like every other science, there's theory and then there's application of it. And as organizational behaviorists, what we're going to want to be able to do, and you will be able to do at the end of the semester, is to look at things and understand why they happen. Look at things that might not make sense, but then think, oh, okay, I understand that from a organizational behavior perspective. I actually had a student in my office today who came in, took my course last semester, and said he was had a conflict at work, and all of a sudden he was talking to his boss. He said, all of a sudden, halfway through, I realized I was telling my boss about I was applying all these things and telling my boss about all these things I had learned in organizational behavior. So there you go. Okay, so that's it for chapter 1, and I will post it, and I'll also post going forward, post the other chapters. Okay, thanks.